Okay, in page Lamed Gimel, Shoam Escheles Hanal Chotzig, which is close to the middle of the page. So we explained the difference, what's the difference in the sphere and partzuf. The sphere is when all in the Kuda and sphere are both part of Torah, because even though sphere is also has 10, it's called Me'eser, but the way it's called, it's not a pshat, they interact and combine with each other and work together. It means it's just bekoyach, that they're in a state of potential, because potential, everything is possible. So here's a question. But if that's the explanation, my emotion is by a little average, but it's feel a parts of earlier, but from its time, what the difference feel in parts of the sphere is called Yud Pamachas. The concept of the sphere means that each sphere is combined only once from 10. The parts of Yud Kamapom. Shkemo in Beitzchaim Bakam. Kam is the part of necessary spheres. In other words, the difference looks like more like a quantity type of difference. This is 10, each sphere is called 10. That's called sphere, and parts of it's called more than 1/10. So that sounds just like a difference in quantity, how much division there is. So if you mention it's barely ill, but according to what we just explained earlier in this mimer, difference is it's not a difference in quantity. This is 10 and this is more than 10. It's 10 times 10, 100, more times 10, 1,000. It's more different in quality. What's the difference in quality? This sphere is like Mashakloni Bekoyach. In the Madriga sphere, the other spheres are called in one sphere only Bekoyach, only in the state of potential. Oh, but it's Partsuf, Shasphere Atom Israelek is huge, like in the Skalos. It's really an essential difference. What's the meaning of Iskalos? Iskalos and sphere has the potential to express itself in 10 ways. And in Partsuf means that it actually, there's an actual division and combination. So, so that's question number one. Why does Kabbalah talk about the difference between combined once or more than once? It's a much deeper type of difference. One sphere is in a way of the koyach, Mashiach parts of its actual is kalos. That's question number one. Gam, another question. The Lashon in Kabbalah is this called sphere, called sphere, the sphere, the Madriga sphere, was a part of it. She calls sphere, in other words, he just questions what he said earlier. Earlier, he said that in the Madriga sphere, it's kol, it's not in the state of the koyach, but it sounds in the Lashon in the Kabbalah that in the Madriga sphere, it's actually divided into 10. That's two questions in the text, but more deeper. So it goes back to the question he asked earlier in page Kuf Lamed Beis. How can in the world of Torah be a concept that they actually divided? That concept that a sphere is koil is not just a state of potential. It means that the sphere is not in the full force. The fact that chesed also has gvura within it means that the sphere has a certain weakness, certain it's not as strong. It allows the other one to be within it. So as it possible in Elam HaTorah. There's another lashon in its Chaim that he introduces. The sphere the difference in sphere and parts of it is that sphere means it only contains all chelke abiyah, all the parts that are atzilus b'yitzir asir. Parts of all kesher spheres. Partov means that the spheres are are connected and bound together. This is the Lashon in another place in Yitzchak. Earlier, the Lashon was a difference between Pamachas Miyud and another Kol Miyud. In this Yitzchak, the Lashon is that in the Madrega of Sphere has the Chelke Abiyah that contains Atzilus Brit Tzir Asir, and Partov means that Kesher. So from that, Lashon Yitzchak also strengthens the question, because from that is mashma the sphere shasfir nechlekes le'eser. If you say that the sphere means that it has abiyah, it means also that it has 10. Why? The os shach lema shenabiyah shabo. Only when we see, only if there is actual division of that sphere, then we can call it abiyah, because atzilus is chachma. The form elements of Abiyah correspond to the 10 spheres. Atzilus, Chachma, Bria, Bina, V'chulu, and Zo is Yitzira and Malchus Asir. So that's also some contradiction here, that we see that in the Madrega of sphere there is at Abiyah. Ain't Kesher v'chibur sphere zem zeh. Like parts of a Kesher as spheres. That's the Lashon in its Chaim Shabbat. So that part also needs more explanation. Since we just said that this sphere is divided into 10, which are also 4, that why shouldn't there be a connection? What is the chiddush? The lashon parts of kesher v'chibur. What's this? What is this chadish in the Madrega of parts? Hainu shekol sphere klula b'sphere acheres klula gam ken mabiyah. K'may chachma shebachachma klula mabiyah chem binish chesed chachma chesed shbo. So the law he just explained about the wording in the Tzchaim that in parts of each sphere there's chachma that say chachma bina shebachachma, and that bina shebachachma is called mabiyah. Very similar a little to what we said earlier. That's the way it is in the Madrega of parts. Similar to what we said earlier, that's Yud Mi Yud, it's more than Yud Mi Yud. So because from this thing still needs explanation. What is the difference in sphere and parts? Shlomo he brings in a new approach to explain. He brings in something interesting we learned earlier in the Hemshech. In the Bemidas, the Tikkun Shakolim is Zamizah Shachas Kol Mikvur and his Babas based in Yon. Really, when we spoke earlier about the concept of the Midas Aklolim is Zamizah, Gvur Shabachas, Chesed Shagvur, we really, if you remember, it was explained 2 ways. Two ways that Chesed has Gvur within it. I mean, Chesed and Gvur is a prototype. Each feels like that. We always bring the dogma of Chesed and Gvur because this is the main prototype. Chesed and Gvur are the 2 main kavim, and the way they interact, the way they combine with each other, this is the prototype for this concept. Aleph, the 2 ways the way Gvur and Chesed are combined with each other. But not basically Gvur Shebachesed. Aleph, Shagvur Shebachesed Agbola B'Pashas HaChesed. Gvur Shebachesed means that the Gvur limits the expansion of the chesed. Chesed in its own nature of chesed is the revelation, expansion in an infinite way. So what results from that nature of chesed, that it's bligvul, but what results from that is Chesed does not differentiate between whether the makabel is worthy of the ashpa or not. Because Chesed be'etzem is an expression of infinite giving. So it makes no difference what the state of the makabel is, what the state of the receiver is, recipient. That is chesed on its own. What is gvura etter the chesed? Lahagbil metzias hachesed shelo yitish pasuk gvura. To limit the chesed, it should not be expand infinitely. That has an effect of chesed. That the chesed is only, the flow of chesed is only reaches and is given only to makabel, the recipient who is worthy of the chesed, not everybody. But it's not mamash gvura. It's not that before each act of goodness you measure whether he deserves or not. But generally speaking, there's a limitation. It's not that strict. It's still chesed. That's we learned earlier in this hemshel, this type of worship of chesed. So that's Inyan Aleph. Inyan Abezu. Then there's a second type of combination of worship chesed. The pasuk says in Mishle, person who doesn't discipline his child, it's really an expression of hatred, which basically disinterest. But if the parent loves the child, he disciplines it. He gives him musa. He rebukes him. So what do we see in that? It's not just that the gvur. What, in other words, how does the chesed express in this situation? That the actual act that we see is gvur. It's judgment. It's rebuke and discipline. So we see two ways gvur chesed. The first one is that the gvur limits the chesed, and the second one is that the gvur itself is an expression of the chesed. There are two I would say separate and different flows of chesed, of gvur chesed. He's going to go into a very long discussion of these two ways, in order to explain the difference in the skalos of Torah and the skalos of Tikkun. In a base in Yanima now when we pay attention to these two modes of gvur chesed, in both of them we see the combination of the gvur and chesed are combined and work together. There's a huge difference between them. The Inyan Aleph, he passes it very, very meticulously. The Inyan Aleph, when we look deeply, when we look carefully in the way the gvur chesed operates, in the first mode, the limit that the gvur puts on the chesed, the gvur comes and says, no, you have to limit the chesed. It can't go anywhere. So what does the gvur do? The gvur works the opposite. It interferes. It blocks the chesed. The opposite of it. The limit that the gvur puts on the chesed is not the limit itself is not chesed. That act is really the opposite of the essence of chesed. So what happens here? He says him in naged chesed. So basically, the gvur in that situation contradicts and opposes the flow of chesed. And actually undoes the chesed. Chesed says, let's give everybody. Comes gvur and says, no, he doesn't deserve it. So you block the chesed, the opposite of chesed. When there's such a situation happen in the middle shebetikun, because the Yosef and the Chalishas and the Amaychin, because middle shebetikun are in a state of weakness to the Meichin, like we explained earlier in the Hemshach, that in the world of Tikkun, the Meichin weakened the midas, just like we know the marshal that he bought various times, that a person is very mature, his Meichin are developed, he controls his emotions, he weakens their effect. So that's the way it was in Tikkun. Because the midah of chesed in the world of Tikkun is weakened by Meichin, because in the world of Tikkun everything is controlled by Meichin, like we said in Tanya, Meich sharit alalev, the Meich controls the emotions. So the chesed has a certain weakness to it. This is why chesed can tolerate the gvur that contradicts him. So the chesed allows the gvur to affect him and limit its scope. At the same time, in the end, the chesed overpowers the gvur. It's not a full contraction. It's not full blockage. Gvur itself, not gvur itself, it's a total, it's a full-blown blockage and contraction that doesn't allow the tzimtzum, that doesn't allow the erech chesed to expand. That's the way it works in gvur itself. There's a total concealment. Which cause of a sefer shel bein and chelik beis perek dalet. The Alter Rebbe explains Shaychet v'Emun the perek dalet that the Shem Elikim hides the gil of Shem Havaya in creation. This is why we can feel independent. So the Midas HaGvur totally hides. We don't feel godliness. We don't feel that the Eibishter created us. We feel independent. That's Gvur the way it's on its own. Even though the Gvur limits and tames the Chesed, but still Chesed overpowers it. So even it's not, it's still Chesed, still flows very powerfully. So the sphere of Chesed, even though it accepts the effect of the opposite midah, which is gvur. Why does Chesed accept that? Because Chesed itself essentially has a certain level of chlishas, weakness, and bittul and nullification because of the meichin. In the end, so describe what happens in this mode of gvur sheba chesed that first there's chesed, then gvur comes and interferes with it, but chesed overpowers it. So it's not, the gvur doesn't block fully the chesed, but in the end there is chesed, but the chesed is tamed, it's weakened by the gvur. So what is the bottom line in the way the Gvur Shem Chesed operates in this first mode, that the Gvur limits the Chesed? The opposite sphere, in our case, the Gvur Shem Chesed, the Gvur is contradicting and opposing the Chesed. Even though the sphere, the original sphere Chesed, accepts partially the limit, is Gaber's boss office my sphere klulaba. So he described the way Gvura Chesed operates, that the Gvura limits the Chesed, but in the end, there's still Chesed. It makes, in other words, let's in simple terms, let's say the Gvura makes sure that he doesn't give the Mishain Roi, but the Mishain gets an abundance, gets maybe more than he deserves, but there's a certain limit. This is Gvura Chesed.
Tikkun or in Tayu?
What?
Sorry, this is in Tayu or in Tikkun?
Can't hear you. Listen, at this point we're talking Tikkun, but later he'll say that that's really this is a way to soften us, so to speak. Later he'll actually say that this type of his kalus is shiur, not the way it is described here. Eventually say that this type of his kalus in a certain way is shiur and toyo also. That's what he's going to say later. But at this point, said clearly that we're in Tikkun still. Later, like I said, what he's doing here is he describes that the two ways in his kalus, two modes of his kalus, and eventually he's going to tell us that the fourth mode, a certain way, or the way it operates, is a shiur also in Toyu. Not the way it's described now, because right now you just said it's a result of Chlishus Amida. It's not mamish. It's a way to give us a little. Okay, so this is what he's getting at. But in order to get there, first he talks in Tikkun Guf. It's very elaborate, and the description of these two ways of Gvura Chesed. Okay.
I'm sorry. So this what you're saying, that it belongs, but the attribute that was affected, it still shines. It doesn't work. So in other words, if somebody in this case of Ashpa of the Chesed, if the Gevura comes in and blocks it in the first mode, as you mentioned, so it is really there's Chesed is completely blocked. It's not that it still is shining through. You know what I'm saying? So
but okay, I hear what he's saying, but he's describing. He doesn't give a clear marshal how it operates, but it's not mamish. There is still Chesed. Like that's what I was trying to say just now, that it limits. It puts a certain level of limit. It should be only Roi, but the Poel, it's still, even to the Roi, it's not given. It's not measured exactly according to what he deserves. He deserves. He gets even more than he deserves. Like I said, he doesn't bring us a clear marshal how it works. But the message is that the Gvura contradicts the Chesed. The Mele, it's only the Mishaloi. At the same time, the Chesed, it's still Chesed Shav Gvura. It's not total blockage. It's not total tzimtzum. So the Chesed is the dominant Midah. There's a flow, but the flow is a certain limit to it.
It fits into the second mode better.
Second one is a different ball game. Let's get the second one in a second. Let's try to understand the first mode again. Is dogma is the Indian of again that Lemishaloi. Lemishaloi means it should not. The Gvura comes and tells the Chesed he cannot be kind to someone who doesn't deserve, which means that the Chesed is limited. But he says the mice, it's like two stages. The mice is that's the last line we just learned. Is gaber as a polos offers masfira kolabo. The Chesed overpowers the Gvura, which means that in the end the Chesed is the dominant one. I don't have an exact description of that type of like I said, that the only one way I can think about it is, like I said, that the one is Roy is getting more. It's not meticulously looked after exactly what his behavior is. It should get exactly what he deserves. He gets more than he deserves, but he, generally speaking, is wrong. That is the only description he's giving us. Okay. Of Inyan Abbez Mashenkin, the second one, the Gvur Shebachesed Kirvay V'Shechem Musa. The Inyan Abbez is different. Inyan Aleph, the Gvur that affects the Chesed, the Gvur, the act of Gvur, blocks the Chesed. It blocks the flow of kindness, of goodness. Like we said earlier, that the father loves the child. As a result of the love, because he cares for him, this is why he disciplines him. So what happens? So when we look at it from the outside, it seems it's not stam chesed, it's mamish gvur. He disciplines him, he punishes him, he rebukes him. So this is not unlike in the first mode, that the gvur limits and contradicts the chesed. In this case, the gvur doesn't contradict. The kindness is not at all undone. Why? The gvur itself, the rebuke, the judgment, this discipline itself, that is the expression of the love. The more the father loves the child, the more he disciplines him. But what happens is, and externally, what we see is gvur, we see judgment, we see discipline. And it serves as a garment, as a cover to the inner love. So the tachlis hagvur is the ava. The ultimate purpose of that rebuke and discipline is the love that the father has for the child, the care. In this scenario, unlike in the first one, the gvur contradicts the chesed. The gvur is an act that blocks and limits the chesed. In the second scenario, in the second mode, the gvur is an actual expression of the chesed. So this is the difference between the two ways of iskalos. In the first one, there is a certain struggle happening. On one hand, you want to be chesed, you want to give. Comes the middle of gur and contradicts. It struggles back. No, you can't give the person who doesn't deserve. Comes chesed and said, no, I will give more than he deserves. So there's a certain struggle happening. So gvur is still in a state. Gvur has to contradict each other. And in the end, there's a certain level of combination. In the second mode, gvur is the actual expression of the chesed. There's no struggle. There's no struggle here. It flows directly. The love expresses itself directly in the way of discipline. But he said, the truth is, he says, even in the second mode, in order to reach that level, there must be some type of struggle. What he said? In order to reach that level, that second level, that the gvur itself, the truth that he says, the second mode is really can only come into existence when there's the first mode, because if a person is in a state of pure goodness and kindness, it's never gonna even enter his mind that in order to express his love to the child, he has to punish him. He has to discipline him. Why? He says like this. Only if the chesed and ava has a certain limitation, which is the first mode. Why? She built Belis if the goodness, the original goodness would be in a state, the kindness, the chesed, will be in a state of pure and unlimited love and goodness, then you'll never even reach the ability to discipline the child because he's in a mode of goodness. When his foot, he limits down, which is the first mode. So really the second mode is an extension of the first. The first stage is that you have to limit the avo. Then the limit itself becomes an expression of the avo. But it's two stages. It brings a raya. שכל ושרחנו ועל בני יחידוי ועל ידי זה דווקא אוי יוכל לסנאי ומינס הגבול לקיים רוץ נווי. It's interesting, he brings the look from Avraham Avinu. Because in Avraham Avinu, I mean, on the face of it, the actual taking Yitzhak the Akedah doesn't express his love for Yitzhak, right? We would say that it's not the love for Yitzhak, it's like he says himself here. L'kayim what's navai. But in some deep level, that itself, the fact that he brings Yitzhak into the Akedah is an expression of him. I think that's what he's saying here. Maybe shtickle chiddush. That itself is an expression of a deeper level of love. I don't know how exactly, but what he brings, I mean, we could explain it somehow, but what he brings here is the point of kovash rachmos. In order for that act to be able to happen, he has to limit kovash rachmos, which is like gvura shebechesed. He has to limit his mercy, his rachmim, his kindness. Okay, so that is important in the Chagav that the second stage can only be as a result of the first. So what? At this point, we go back to the original point that he made. He brought in the last few lines. He brought in a kvetch that in order to reach the second mode, you have to have the first. But now he's going back to explain what is the advantage of the second over the first. In the second mode of Iskalus, it's a much stronger, much more powerful type of combination. In the first mode, they are, like we said before, they struggle. There's a struggle happening. Chesed wants one thing, Gvura wants the opposite thing, and then they somehow come to some type of pshara, some type of compromise. But it's a compromise of two warring, two opposite tnuas. In the second mode, the two modes of Gvura and Chesed working together, they don't contradict each other. In the first way, they fight with each other. There's a struggle, like I said. Now, so to summarize, what we learned here is that in the first oifen, the way they operate together, there's no mamish situation of Iskalus, because there's a certain type of struggle between them. They fight with each other, they contradict each other. Now, based on Iskalus, that's point one. Like I just mentioned before, we said the last few lines before we came to the summary, that in order to achieve the second way of Iskalus, there has to be first the first. So that was a very long and and detailed description of the two ways of Iskalus. He chose to illustrate it in Gvur Shebechesed because that's actually the first. You can say that this is when we look in this, assuming the sphere. The first thing he say, the first combination we see is Gvur Shebechesed, when two can contradict. So that's one reason why I chose that, and the other one, like I said, because these are the two main modes of two opposite flows of relation in a relation. Either Gvur or Chesed. Gvur Shebechesed shows its colors. Going back to the Nimshal, Fizeh Shleima Shemadriga. Now, to that explanation, you'll answer the question he asked in page Kuf Lamed Gim. He asked a few questions. So, what is he answering here? Shemadriga the Tikkun. But in like I told you before, we're still talking in Tikkun here. So the way it works in Tikkun, we have both of these types of scales in Tikkun. So how does it operate? The difference between the two Ischalkus, the Yud, the Mischalkus, the Yud, each sphere is welcome to 10, and then 10 times 10. What's the difference? That's actually what he's saying. Ischalkus is Shoino, Shamid, and Achlakis, the Yud, the Kmash Bechesed, the Akbal, Mr. Gvor, Shen's Ischalkus Mamash. When he say Gvor Shebechesed, Ischalkus for Yud, that there's Gvor Shebechesed, Chesed Shebegvor, that is the first mode, the first type of Ischalkus. Shen's Ischalkus Mamash Adain. It's not fully blown Ischalkus because they still struggle with each other. They block each other, they contradict each other, and they come to some kind of compromise. When then there's a second division of Yud, that means there's a base, like Niskalas Mamash. There is a Yosef Niskalas of Shnei Fani. So in a way, he answers the question he asked before. What's the difference if it's divided into 10 or divided into 100? It sounds more like a quantitative type of division. So what he's answering here is that that's not the case. That the difference in these two combination is like the two Ifani, the two modes we just described. When he say Gvor Shebechesed Stam, when he say Gvor Shebechesed Stam, that means that there's a struggle, like I said. There's Sheisim Zez Zemenatim. Say Gvor Shebegvor Shebechesed, that signifies the second level, that it's pure Gvor. In other words, the way it seems to us, it's not just that he limits the Chesed. It's pure Gvor. It's discipline, it's punishment, and that is Chesed. So that is the further level of the scholars. So now he brings in another point he made in the earlier in the Saf the Maim of Ayas Kolev, being his Chalkus, his Kalus, Komish, his Chalkus, Yesa, Boknas, his Kalus. Over there, if you remember, that was one of these in our Hemshach, one of these statements that were quite difficult to explain and to understand, but the way we explained it then was that when the mashal we had over there, I think that's the mashal I gave. The mashal was that when you have two people disagreeing with each other, so it's harder to get them to come to compromise. But when you have Ischalk, there's a bigger crowd, you find more points of connection. That is the mashal I gave there. But what he said in the Maimah was the more Ischalkus, the more Ischalkus. The more division there is, the more you can find ways of connection. That's what it said in the Maimah there. But in our Maimah, he's saying that when there's Gvur Shebechesed once, that only reaches the level of Iskalus, which Oifen Aleph, the first mode, which they contradict each other, they argue with each other, and then come to some kind of compromise. But there's more Ischalkus when the Gvur itself, Gvur Shebechesed itself is divided into 10, so that allows for deeper type of Iskalus, that the Gvur itself is Chesed. This is the point he's making.
Don't you think, David, don't you think that with the Vayas Kolev is the Indian that Kolev said, yeah, I agree with you.
No,
that,
it's not even Kolev. Don't even think about Kolev now. It's Kolev is Tam. There's a Dibur HaMaschil. It's just a Amaramokim. In the page over there, in the page Kuf Chav Beis, which is the end of my Vayas Kolev, he explains how these Kalus, the Lashon is Shaidei Savas, the Riba Yitzchalkus, the Gamken Mamzid, the way Kalus and Yitzchalkus go together. That's the point. That's the point he made in that mime. Don't pay attention to words Vayas Kolev. It's just a Mahamok. It's in that mime that he spoke about how the Kalus brings Yitzchalkus. The other way, the Yitzchalkus brings the Kalus. Avo, going back, the first level of Ischalkus, when it's only divided into 10, at that point, it's not a full combination, like we said, if and Aleph, the first mode, that the Gvur and the Chesed really interfere with each other, contradict each other, oppose each other. Novos, there is this outside, there's a force that they come to some kind of compromise. The Tikkun, the Yois, repeats the same thing he said before, because in Tikkun, the Chesed has a certain chlishus, it has a certain weakness. So that's why Gvur Shebechesed has the capability to limit the Gilul Shebechesed, and that allows later, like we just said, to the second type of Iskalus. Okay, so that's okay. So he finished again. So all this is an introduction to what he's really trying to teach us. He wanted to explain how the topic at hand that we got into this long discussion to develop is the question: what is the concept of Iskalus and Toyu? And which we started earlier. That it says in its Chaim that Nekuda and Sphere is in Toyu, and parts of it is in Tikkun, which Sphere means Kol Me'eser. So as it's possible, it should be Iskalus and Toyu. That was the main topic of discussion. And first he brought from Peimek HaMeler that's only B'koyach. But then he wasn't satisfied with that answer because it says in its Chaim a few places that it's not B'koyach. There's real Iskalus there. B'meila is still in the. So in order to answer that question, he introduced this entire discussion of the okay, so we'll continue tomorrow. All right, okay.
Okay, very nice.
So, yeah.
Shkaya.